It's just gone lunchtime. This is All Angles here on eNCA. Good afternoon. I'm Cholera. It's that time of the day when we give you an update on how far some of the stories we've been following for you throughout the course of the day have advanced. Here's your lunchtime update. All right, our reporters have been out and about bringing us the latest news on our top stories. I'm joined by Pule Letshwiti-Jones in Pretoria. There is Dasen Thathiah in Durban for us. And of course, Moloto is in our Johannesburg studios. Pule, I'm going to start with you, particularly because there's been breaking news from this morning about the fact that the death toll with the cholera outbreak in Hammanskraal has now increased to 17. I understand that a council sitting today in the city of Tshwane was also disrupted because of the news.
Well, definitely, yes, indeed, Masiho. The MMC for Finance, Peter Sutton, is supposed to be delivering his budget speech, but of course that was disrupted by the EFF. They staged a picket during the sitting, saying that the issue of the cholera outbreak has to be intensively discussed. The Speaker then adjourned the Council for an hour. He came back. They still couldn't, the Speaker and the Chief Whips of Council still couldn't get to a resolution. They then again adjourned the sitting for an additional 2 hours. So for now, we're still waiting. But while this is the case, the mayor then decided to release the speech, saying that he is not going to entertain the politicking that's happening in council. We've now gotten a sense of what is required to actually try and resolve the water crisis in Hammanskraal in a form of fixing the Rooiwal water plant. We now know that a 2.5 billion rand is required to fix that water plant to resolve the water crisis in Hammanskraal, but the city does not have enough money, and therefore they are setting aside 450 million rand for phase 2 of the project. Hopefully, they'll also be going to other banks to try and get a loan, and also communicating with the national government to see how they can try and resolve this issue with urgency.
Today, MMC Peter Sutton is presenting a budget in which the largest single allocation is made to the refurbishment of the Rooiwal wastewater treatment plant thus far. We're committing 450 million rand over the next 3 years, 150 million rand in each of the years of the budget. Now, that is not enough to solve the problem. We've said over and over again, the resources of the city of Tshwane are simply too limited to do the upgrades there. We also have serious supply chain management issues with irregular tenders being approved by this city in the past that we've got to be honest about. So we lack the resources, we lack the expertise, we're going to need partnerships. But this contribution of 450 million rand in the next 3 years, 150 million in the next financial year, is a bold step to start solving the problem. We know we're going to need to partner with other spheres of government. We're talking to the...
All right, Dasen, let's come to you. 2 robbery suspects killed by police this morning and stolen goods recovered. Police making quick arrests or moving quickly with regards to this particular case. How did they know that a robbery was in progress?
Well, you know, I've been standing here just thinking about how complicated this network of criminality is and why crime intelligence and vigilance is so important. Just to locate this particular scene, so I'm here in Newlands East, which is in Durban. The robbery itself actually happened in Paddock, which is plus or minus about 2 hours away from where I am now. So through this network and through the reports that came in through security companies and police officers on that part of the KwaZulu-Natal province, they were then able to network and ultimately track these suspects here to this house that they were found in, which is just behind me. At the moment, in fact, that scene is still being processed by police, and it's there where police say that they had found these suspects offloading that vehicle. So if you had to put it simply, it's as though they were caught red-handed at the time when they were in the possession of stolen goods, which were being transported, we found out, by an Uber vehicle, which is another problem in itself, because that allows in some cases for these goods to move around undetected. So in this particular instance, all of those different units and those security companies came together. They located the suspects to this house. There was a shootout when they arrived here because they say that the suspects at that time then opened fire on them, and as a result of that, 2 of those suspects were killed. In fact, their bodies are still on the property now. That's why the mortuary van is just not far away from where I am now. They're here to retrieve those. We had an opportunity earlier to speak to Brigadier J. Naika. He was here and he was just explaining to us how some of these events unfolded. Let's take a listen to what he had to say to me.
Okay, at approximately, or just after 6 o'clock this morning, a courier vehicle was passing the paddock area on the N2 when they were confronted by suspects traveling in a blue Toyota Corolla. They robbed the courier vehicle of various items, including electronic goods. They loaded the stolen items into their vehicle and they fled the scene. Police and security companies were alerted, and a process began where they tracked this vehicle all the way from the south coast to the Newlands East area. As the police officers arrived on the scene, they spotted the suspects removing items from the vehicle and taking it into the house. The police officers the suspects saw the police officers and they opened fire. There was an exchange of gunfire, and during the shootout, 2 suspects were killed and 1 was arrested.
Right, let's bring it back to Joburg now. My colleague Moloto has been following the inquiry, or the inquest rather, into the Life Esidimeni tragedy where 144 mental health patients died, Moloko, helpless people. And I understand today the former Premier of Gauteng, David Makhura, was testifying. What did he have to say?
Good afternoon, Masero. Yes, David Makhura, the former Premier of Gauteng, taking to the witness stand in that inquest that is being held before the Pretoria High Court, primarily to determine who ought to be held criminally liable for the death of those over 140 mental care patients in Gauteng relating to the controversial Life Esidimeni. Of course, he is taking to the witness stand 2 weeks after the former MEC, Xedani Mahlangu, testified in that inquest that the decision to terminate the contract of Life Esidimeni was taken by a so-called Premier Budget Committee that was chaired by Premier David Makhura. And we had yesterday the former Finance MEC, Barbara Creasy, who was part of that particular Premier Budget Committee, refuting the claims by the former MEC of Health, saying that that committee had no authority or constitutional power to terminate or even appoint the service providers. And when Premier David Makhura took to the witness stand today, he also echoed the sentiments that were made by Barbara Creasy yesterday, saying that it would have been unlawful had such a decision been taken. You should recall, Masero, that the argument here by both Creasy as well as David Makhura is that when Xedani Mahlangu made a presentation in that budget committee, she told the committee that they intend to remove at least 20% of the patients at that time from Life Esidimeni facilities and put them into the facilities that are owned by government itself. There was no mention, according to them, of the NGOs having to come and take over. But let's listen to David Makhura as he was talking here about how he learned. He says he learned about the killing of, or the death of, at least the first 36 patients who had died, as it was announced by Xedani Mahlangu in the legislature. At the time he was in the VAL, it was his former spokesperson who said, Premier, this is the news that has happened, 36 people died. And he says he was completely in the dark. And the following day, he summoned Mahlangu into a meeting. Let's listen to him.
In the first instance, I was quite livid. I want to say that I was quite livid. So we have 36 patients who have died in our facilities. In my head, that's what it is said they are in the NGO. So I was quite livid. How does this happen? And secondly, precisely how many people died? Under what circumstances did they die? So we go into the meeting. The MEC brings a delegation. The HOD is there in the meeting, but there are also officials from the mental health unit or division of the department, including the chair of the advisory board on mental health. So I asked these questions very vigorously.
All right, that was your eNCA lunchtime update from all angles with reporters Moloko, Moloto, Dasen, Thathiah and Pule Letshwiti-Jones. Thank you very much, team.